Yes, sir.
Do you want me to do the intro? Because like a lot of people watching on my channel.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So I'm going live.
Yeah, I'm going live. I think
That's
I've.
because you're live right now.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new stream. We got 21 viewers already. Today we're going to be having a reasonable discussion on Trump's presidency and the future of American conservatism, featuring two other YouTubers, Forum for Conservatism and Wandering Ruski. If you guys like to introduce yourself to my subscribers, so and by the way, they're good channels. If you want to subscribe to them, you can do so. The link is in the description below. So if you guys want to, whoever wants to go first can go first.
I'll pass the floor to Ruski.
Well, thank you. So basically we've been having this. So if I had to discuss who I am in a very short bite-sized piece, I would consider myself the main bread and butter of my channel being about identitarianism, basically the politics of national identity and preserving that and preserving the people, the culture, the language, the traditions and customs of those nations. And then overall in a broader scheme, if I had to, I would consider myself a national conservative, a nationalist. I'm a big fan of the people we have on. They're really great guys, and I'm looking forward to hoping having a good discussion with them. And I pass it to Forum for Conservatism.
All right. Hello, everybody. I run a channel called the Forum for Conservatism, obviously. I only have 3 videos out right now about, well, one is an introduction. 2 more are about natalism and a porn ban. I am working on more as we go along. I'm working on setting up a debate with another YouTuber right now. And I am working on an immigration video that will be about an hour long. So that will be fun to watch if people have the attention spans for it. And yeah, I'm also a national conservative. I believe in national identity, and I am also very socially conservative. I could also be described as a national populist as well. I've had a previous discussion with Ruski here. That was about 3 weeks ago. And we've been trying to get this set up ever since, but only today has really worked. So, yeah.
So, right. So should we discuss on what exactly we're going to be discussing in this stream?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay, so first we're going to be talking about, there's 3 main topics that we're going to be hitting on. The first being Donald Trump. We're going to grade his presidency, considering it's coming to an end, at least for the first term. And we are basically, besides all the COVID things coming through, there's not really, at least from our perspective, nothing's going to radically change the trajectory of it. So we could probably give within a reasonable doubt his performance as a president and what we think he did right and wrong. The second, we're also going to discuss the 2020 election, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. This is something Red Eagle obviously excels in. And then we're also going to be talking about the future of the American right, the future of conservatism, and what would a national conservative, what's the right pathway that the right needs to go on to win in the future.
Yes, brilliant. All right, so starting with Donald Trump's presidency, what are the grades, gentlemen?
All right, so I'll let Red Eagle go first.
Yeah. So honestly, in terms of grading Trump's presidency, personally, I do think you have to go off of the issue. I think there's some issues that Donald Trump has done a very good job on, and there's some issues that I believe that he could use a little bit of work on. So it really depends on the issue. Overall, I'd give him around a B. I would have expected an A from his 2016 win, but nonetheless, I think he's done a fairly decent job. Nonetheless, and I do believe that I do really believe that we could do better next time around with the presidency, and hopefully he can get better people around him if he does get reelected to a second term this November.
All right, I'll go. I guess I'd probably give him probably either a D or a D plus. Essentially, he's been a complete and utter failure, I'd say, on just about every aspect of his presidency, aside from maybe trade deals and protectionism. Maybe the economy, too. I think that the state that it's in right now is hardly his fault, so I'm not going to knock him for that. But his failures can't really be seen any clearer than on the issue of immigration. He's failed to build the wall, failed to add the citizenship question to the census, failed to deport illegals in massive numbers despite multiple promises that he would. He's actually repeatedly said that he wants more legal immigration, which is contradicting his agenda at times, which is, well, legal immigration is also as destructive as illegal immigration as well. So that's a point of note. He has fought on them. I won't deny that, but I don't think he's fought to the extent of which we could reasonably expect him to, given his status as sort of a populist firebrand. So for that reason, a D or a D plus for me.
So for myself, as we can see, it's like two different, two very different opposing views. For me, I would put around like a C, like a 75%. I think
it's fair.
The reason why I put that there is it depends on how you're going to grade. Now, if you're going to grade on like how we want him, like what would be a perfect president, I think I would go for Forum for Conservatism. But if we're grading it based on expectations and like a realist point of view, I would kind of make a little bit towards Red Eagle in this. So you have to like, because, you know, obviously we have a lot of ideas we want to push through, but it's like, okay, in a realistic aspect, how much are we going to push through? Like, for example, when Obama got elected and he had a super majority, he had 59 votes in the Senate. He, you know, had a huge majority in the House, and he won a bigger victory than Donald Trump. And he had like a huge recession behind him to like institute change. And the biggest thing he did was like a small stimulus package that, you know, was just like some funds thrown everywhere. And then like, you know, and then the biggest thing was his Obamacare thing. But that was like his out of a huge win. All he got was those small little steps. Now, obviously, you know, he campaigned on much grander promises. Now, the same thing with Trump. Now, you know, obviously, I think that in the beginning of his presidency, he's focused on the wrong things. I think he's a very good campaigner. I think his instincts are good. I don't think he's a very good governor in the terms of like governing the nation. I think he's, I think, and that's why it's extra bad because, you know, even in any president, it's bad for who you surround yourself with. But with Trump, the people who he surrounds himself with are the ones dictating policy because they're the ones doing a lot of the back work because he doesn't have any experience. This is like the learning thing as well. So a lot of people who do have experience are the ones doing the policy, and a lot of them who he hired for that job aren't as. In fact, a lot of them voted for Clinton over Trump. So I think he's not like a bad president. I think he would have been better than Hillary 100%. I think I want him to win over Joe Biden 100%. But there's obviously he could have done way more better than he could have. But if you want to be kind to him, maybe there's been a lot of there's a mix of like just the inertia of government and then also his kind of a little bit of a weakness in terms of his experience in governing. So I think it's a mixture of that. So that's why I give it about a middle of a road thing.
Yeah. To kind of comment on that with Obama, presidents do get a limited amount of things that they're able to push through, but President Trump's priorities are kind of an indictment of how his presidency has gone wrong. Through budget reconciliation, I believe you can pass 2 bills through per year with a simple majority in the Senate, and he used those on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and Paul Ryan's terrible health care bill, when he could have used either one of those on the wall, and we would probably have a wall right now. And if it got struck down by the Senate, well, then at least he would have tried. But I think that his biggest problem is a lack of priorities. And to sort of touch on what you said in the later part of your message there, he does appoint really terrible people to cabinet positions. I wonder exactly what was going through his mind, perhaps nothing at all, when he chose John Bolton as national security advisor, for example.
I agree with that. I do agree with that, actually. No, yeah, I mean, I actually agree with some of your points there. I think that a lot of the priorities that he's been, pushing for have not exactly been the most well-guided priorities. I really do believe that he has focused on some of the wrong things at times. At the same time, the biggest problem with him was the fact that he would compromise with the establishment at times far more than he should have. And that's kind of what held his presidency back. As for the wall, I think that he's done some on it. He's supposed to build, I think, a couple 100 miles by the end of his term or something like that. But it's not fully built, and he's still having very high record numbers of legal immigration, saying he wants more legal immigrants. So, I mean, that's another thing that I think he's fell a little bit short on.
Yeah, and I mean, about the wall, I hope that he gets hundreds of miles done, but as of December of 2019, only 3 miles of new border wall has actually been built. 93 total, 90 was replacement fence. So I think that it's I hope he can turn it around, but I think it's rather unlikely that he does.
And what would you guys say in terms? Let's be a bit put stark. Let's name the top. Maybe I'm just put the top thing. Like, what's the top best thing you think Trump has done for his presidency, and the worst thing that he's done?
Would you like to go first, Red Eagle?
Yeah. Well, I think the best thing he's done is probably trade. He's actually kept his promise to stand up to China. He's put tariffs on China. I think that's a big benefit. Yeah, on rhetoric, he's moved the party. I mean, he's moved the party in the right direction on rhetoric. He's become, making it a more populist party, a more, party that's good for the blue collar workers. That's a good thing moving forward. He expanded the base to a certain degree. He's brought the energy, and he's kind of brought a newfound rhetoric of American nationalism to a degree. That's probably what I would say the best thing he's done in his presidency. Also, the tax cuts, I don't think they were bad. I think that's a benefit, at least for the middle class. I think maybe he cut a little bit too much for the upper class, but that's just my opinion on what I thought he did best. Did you want me to say what he did that's bad now?
Yeah.
Again, I think that the worst thing he did was, I mean, foreign policy is kind of a letdown. Immigration is kind of a letdown as well. I think a lot of that has to do with who he's put around him, who he's listened to. I think that's probably some of the worst things he's done, aside from the bump stock ban, which I don't really believe does a single thing good at all for the country, just leading down the slippery slope of restricting American freedoms.
Definitely. So for me, I'd say to kind of echo Red Eagle on the first two, trade deals and tariffs and trade protectionism is all stuff that he's knocked out of the park. He's renegotiated NAFTA, pulled us out of TPP, a bunch of things like that. I'd say second of all, it's essentially what he stands for: increased nationalism. Occasionally he'll be helpful in the rhetorical game with, I'm from Minnesota, so I loved the example of him at the rallies where he got his crowd to start, or I guess he didn't, but he got his crowd to start chanting "Send her back" about Ilhan Omar. And I would love nothing more than if that were possible at the moment, but it isn't. And unfortunately, he did disavow them, so I'm not sure how much of a victory that was. But in regards to the worst thing he's done, just probably everything to do with immigration, just a train wreck. Oh, and I should say, I forgot the third positive, that being the judges that he's appointed.
Yeah, I should have mentioned the judges. Yeah. He's done a good job on judges.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, I think Red Eagle actually pointed it a little bit. I think the best thing that Trump will be known for, even if he gets a second term, is it's less, I think, the biggest thing, the best thing that he could come out of Trump's presidency is a realignment. Now, yeah. I hope on this all depends, like if Trump loses in 2020, I think there's going to be a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. I don't know if they'll revert back. So the biggest thing, if this comes through, the biggest thing, and if this comes true, the best thing that will come out of a Trump presidency is the realignment of the Republican Party away from a neoconservative, market fundamentalist mindset, and to becoming because that's like what came from Reagan, and what brought from Reagan. For example, a lot of people talk about the realignment that happened during the civil rights. I hope that and one thing that brought about was Barry Goldwater. A lot of people who used to be Democrats reverted to the Republicans because they saw the Republican Party was now the socially conservative party, while as the Democrats were realigning being the more progressive party. When that happened, that's why, the southern states started voting Republican, things like that. I think for Trump, a lot of the white working class, and I think just the working class in general, being a civic nationalist party, I think the realignment is the best thing that could come out of a Trump presidency. Now, obviously, if he loses or after 2 terms, the Republican Party reverts back, then obviously that didn't, but obviously it gives a hope for future. A lot of future Republicans are now speaking like Trump, and I think that would be the best thing that could come out of a Trump presidency. The worst thing, obviously, is now a lot of like what Forum for Conservatism said. I think a lot of those are disappointments. It's not like I think he's like done bad. Like, a bad thing on immigration would be like he legalized the illegal immigrants here, or he like loosened H-1B visas. I think that would have been a bad thing. But I think hasn't done as much, but I think he's done some good things there. I think the worst thing is I think his that's a good question. I think his for me, obviously, I'm a big fan of the environment. I think he's pushing while we have to not be like the party that's like anti like natural gas and everything. I think he's way too dismissive of environmental concerns. I think there needs to be at least a common sense conservationist element in the in the right, and I think that he's just dismisses that there's any sort of. I think a lot of his like deregulating a lot of the in the EPA and all that. I think that's, at least to me, at least personally, I think I don't like a lot of his anti-environmental agenda. But that's just for me.
Yeah, I think that's the corporate urban side of him. But you say about the disappointing things he's done on immigration. I think that you could say they're bad as well, because inaction is action in this issue. Because if we get another Democrat in office, they'll give them legal status if they can. And also, like, if you don't deport them, they're just going to have more kids. And those kids will be American citizens, and we won't be able to move them. So the longer we keep them in the country, the worse it is. It's a ticking clock. It's like if you view the National Debt Clock website, it's like that, except for like illegal or anchor babies becoming American citizens.
Well, because what it does is it's detrimental to the Republican Party.
Yes.
In the long run. That's kind of one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that are it's going to screw Republicans over in future elections if we don't take care of the problem.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about Trump is that while his instincts are really good, and I think we also mentioned that his administrative side though isn't so good. Yeah. One thing I will admit, and I'm looking at this from the 2018 election and a lot of things like that. One thing I want is someone who embodies the working class spirit of Trump, the person who could bring us the blue collar votes from Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And perhaps even like Minnesota and all that, but also make it where he's not obviously. I like Trump, I think, and maybe it is essential that when people attack him for being racist, he could punch back. But like, I feel like he's too. I think a lot of the suburban vote, especially like suburban college educated type people who are in the suburbs, like like in Northern Virginia and things like that. And in the suburbs of Arizona, we kind of need them to see, because I think they would vote for a populist, but like they just don't like Trump's demeanor and his way of talking and his like unprofessionalism.
Well, yeah, I think that we're going to have somebody that's going to be able to do a little bit better at playing the media per se. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that Trump is good to a certain extent. I think he can control a news cycle, but at the same time, he gives them too much ammo to go off of. And if I was president, I would not be giving them the amount of ammo that he's giving them.
Essentially, what we need is someone who will take his sort of uncouth populism and turn it into a new form of intellectual conservatism. And I think there are a few candidates to do that. But that would obviously be a concern for 2024, which I guess we'll get to when we run out of stuff to say on this issue.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of his if you guys got what do you think was let's say you're Trump, what do you like when you got elected? You saw that the results are coming in and you saw that you won, and you're now starting to choose who you're gonna what are you gonna do? You have this majority in both, you have a slight majority in the Senate, you have a majority in the House. What do you do? And what do you think the ideal thing you should have done? And what do you think Trump diverted from that? Or what do you think he did good when he entered the White House?
Sure. I think that, first of all, I would essentially stack my cabinet with loyalists who won't betray me like a lot of his appointments do. And in addition to that, I'd pull out all the stops to get as much passed in those first 2 years as possible. I'd, day one, sign an order revoking birthright citizenship. That would obviously have to go through the courts and whatnot. But
it would get upheld, in my opinion.
Hopefully, but yeah. it would be a long and lengthy legal process regardless. And then I'd do the wall through budget reconciliation and just focus hard on immigration through the first like month or so until the issue's pretty much solved.
What about you, Red Eagle?
Yeah. You're asking what I would have done if I was Trump?
Yeah, so like let's say you're Trump and you saw the election results and like, okay, so what am I going to do to make sure that I could do my agenda when I'm first getting into this White House in the beginning of 2017? What do I do? And what do you think Trump did wrong?
I think the key thing would be to keep the promises. I think he kept a lot of the economic promises that he made. I don't think that he kept enough social promises that he made. In my opinion, on immigration, I think he should have done what he said in the campaign. Oh, I'm going to deport all the illegal aliens in the country. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. He needed to rescind birthright citizenship. I don't think he mentioned that during the campaign. If he did, it wasn't really something that was covered in the news cycle. But he needed to take more action, executive action on immigration. In my opinion, I think that he needed to. I think he got off on a rocky footing with the press. I think that he just needed to kind of just say, make a little bit of peace with them and you be quiet and do a lot of his action within policy to make the nation stronger instead of getting into a lot of the petty feuds that he was able to get into.
Mm-hmm. One thing I always find interesting is like all these like executive orders that he puts, a lot of these things, like the way, maybe this is just how would you say it? Just because he doesn't have enough experience knowing how to like what things he would push through. But like, I would put like every single thing you could do by executive order in like the first like 7 days, just like zoom them all through. And then, and the one thing I like that's so base now, obviously would probably bring down the Republic, but like, it's like, like for example, when the court said, no, you cannot put the, your, a citizenship question on the for the census. It's like, well, I like the Andrew Jackson quote. It's like, the court has made their decision. Now let's see them enforce it. Now, obviously, you can't really, that would bring down the whole system. But like, it'd be pretty cool though if he just said fuck.
I actually agree entirely with that. That's what I would do if I was president. However, in this context, I don't think that could, I'd say, reasonably be expected of him. I wish it could be. That would be amazing if he would have just told the court to go F off, basically. I don't know if you can swear on this, if you want me to, that is. Yeah. But that would be fantastic. And the court is obviously in gross overreach. I think it's ridiculous to tell a sitting president that he can't revert the decision of a previous one through the same exact process. And that kind of is very indicative of how partisan and biased the courts have gotten.
This might sound like, very, like crass of me, but I really hope like Ruth Bader Ginsburg just dies already. Like, come on, you're like I'm just waiting.
I don't know how many times she has to die before she actually goes. I mean,
waiting with the crab dance memes.
Yeah, like how long, how many like health issues hasn't she had like cancer like 5 times already? Hasn't she like gone to the hospital like every other week and she still manages to walk out unscathed? It's like a miraculous. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trump does get reelected if she actually made it to the end of his second term, because she doesn't go away.
Yeah, she's like immortal. I wish cancer would just be a bro and just take care of that one for us.
The thing with her is that I mean, actually, and this probably could lead us to the election thing, but like, I actually think that if Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies and like Trump's starting to appoint, I think that would actually like turn out a lot of like left wing people because they're like, oh, like we have to get Trump out before he. Though then again, maybe if he just she dies like now, they just rush the appointment through and then just appoint them like, okay, then now there's no point anymore.
Yeah, and we're not going to have the same gridlock that we did during Kavanaugh because we have 53 seats now. Even if Murkowski and Collins, the two pro-choice senators, were to flip against the nominee, you still have 51 votes. And Jeff Flake is gone to maybe replaced with Mitt Romney, but that's still 50 votes. So it's not really a concern getting any justices passed through unless you're going to pass through like a radical that everyone hates.
Yeah. So we should, I think another thing that I think that the reason why, for me personally, this is when the Democrats were running through, I said the worst person they could have in power is Elizabeth Warren, not just because she sucks both socially and economically, well, she has some good ideas, but the thing is that she knows how to play the federal bureaucracy. She knows that, like, you know, like Bernie's like, we're just going to like use a tidal wave of people and like overcome everything. But I think the true way you get power is through the behind the scenes, you know, filling the courts.
Bernie just doesn't get it.
Yeah. And so I think Elizabeth Warren understood that it's through the bureaucracy that's where all the big things are going through. Because, you know, when you might have Trump spouting all these things, but it's the people within the Department of Homeland Security that are the ones who have to enforce the laws, who limit, like, you know, and all these things. So it was obviously, you have to have someone who understands that. So I think with that, that's another thing I say he kind of did pretty poorly on. But I think I agree with Forum for Conservatism. You need to have loyalists around you. And, you know, there's people who've been through you. Like, the way you could determine is to be like, when you're running your campaign, like Jeff Sessions was like the first senator endorsing him. Like,
and then he betrays him and endorses Tommy Tuberville, the open borders rhino, which pisses me off.
Well, yeah, it's a whole sketchy situation because Trump appoints Sessions to AG, and then Sessions betrays him, and then Trump decides to pick the rhino just to get back at him for political purposes. Honestly, when you have a person that wants an immigration moratorium in Sessions. So at the end of the day, I think that Trump doesn't care that much about immigration, and I think a lot of people just need to accept that. And he's good for some other issues, but at the same time, we're going to need somebody next time that's going to do a little bit better of a job than Trump when it comes to some of these issues.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing I'll say is that now I understand. I'm not saying Trump is like. I think Trump generally believes in, like, at least his instincts are right. He's like, you know, why are we in these wars? I think immigration is kind of out of control. He has his instincts are right. In the sense of, like, in the right direction, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think he's very, I think when he ran, I don't think he was going to run because, like, I'm going to save him. I think he, like, legitimately, like, didn't know he was going to even win. I think he was going to, like he was going to run and then, like, drop out, like, but he didn't realize how popular his ideas were, that he's like, you know, like he kind of, like, put some out in the ether and then everyone attached to it. And that's what made him, you know, win eventually. But I think as Red Eagle said, I don't think he's as, I mean, you know, he wants things to go through, and I think he'll do a lot more if he had more things, but I don't think he's as, like some, you know, he's like, well, you know, if this doesn't go through, whatever, you know, I think he's not as strong-willed.
His agenda now is different than his agenda was back in 2015 and 2016. When Trump announced, he actually was advocating, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he was advocating for single-payer health care. And he wanted to keep the individual mandate. Then he flipped on that, which may have been a good thing that he got rid of the mandate, in my opinion. But still, it shows that I don't know we don't really exactly know what his set agenda was. I mean, is now, because it's different from where he started, and he'll have people in there that will control his agenda. For example, a good example is the First Step Act, which I have mixed feelings on. I think some of it was good in my opinion, because in my opinion, I think we have too many people in prison. It's a little bit of a waste of money. But honestly, that was not exactly part of his original plan. So something must have changed where some people got in there, said something, did something, and he basically just flip-flopped on the issue.
Yeah, he's essentially allowed his entire movement to be co-opted, basically. His tax cut plan, which was essentially just Paul Ryan's tax cut plan, was entirely different than the one he initially campaigned on, which was a very progressive one, which no one who made under $25,000 a year would have to pay any income taxes. That was in his campaign sort of manifesto. So yeah, that is another problem. He's very easily influenced, and I think has to do with him being also very egotistical. So
he's a businessman. He's always had to make deals with people. The problem was he made a deal with the establishment in Paul Ryan, which he shouldn't have made. In fact, Trump should have done something. I don't know exactly how, but he should have been able to get his man to be the speaker. Or he should have said, I would like so-and-so to be speaker, or I will endorse all of your primary challengers if you vote against them, and you will be unseated. I think that would have been something, taking a stand for something. I don't know, somebody like Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Paul Gosar, having one of them be the House Speaker would be great and in terms of enacting an actual conservative agenda, which Paul Ryan just answers to corporate people. That's it.
I definitely agree. I think it's down to a lot of political inexperience, as Ruski said earlier. Yeah.
So let's move on to the 2016 election now. Obviously, or earlier, we've been talking too much about the past. The 2020 election. So now that we basically know it's going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, unless something happens to one of them. Let's just do broad. Who do you think at this point is going to win?
I'll let Reddy go first because he's
personally, I think that Donald Trump still has the upper edge right now. Clearly, if you look at national polling, even before this whole virus happened, it was Biden +5, Biden +6, and roughly now it's Biden +4, Biden +5. So at the same time, I think that the virus has not really affected Donald Trump's victory chances very much, in my opinion. Obviously, Trump hasn't even been attacking Biden. Biden hasn't even been in the media that much, and that's allowing him to ride high. But at the same time, you have the Reid allegations, and you have Biden's favorables dropping below where Hillary Clinton's favorables were in 2016. So I think that Trump is in a fairly good shape. He needs to find a way to campaign properly. I don't know what the circumstances will be with all of these ordinances, stay-at-home orders. I don't believe he can exactly have rallies in the conventional sense, at least in some of these places. But I think he's going to have to focus on the Rust Belt and potentially pass through some other legislation that's more populist, and maybe even get a healthcare plan out. And if he can do that, he could win by a decent margin.
Yeah, I essentially agree. I think Trump definitely has the edge. There's a lot of things that are working against him, like demographics in certain states, but Joe Biden is so incompetent and useless as a political candidate, and he's way past his prime. So Donald Trump will most likely defeat Joe Biden, I have to say. And I think that he'll probably lose Michigan. I think that Arizona will probably be a toss-up. I think he'll pick up New Hampshire, though. And obviously, even if he doesn't pick up New Hampshire, that's still a victory.
Well, yeah, I think that the people need to understand there's a 270 or a 260 firewall. I can't see Trump losing Florida or North Carolina. I can't see Trump losing those states. And even some of the polls that have him down 6 or 7 say that Trump's up in the battleground states, including places like Florida, North Carolina. I think he's going to hold Ohio, Iowa. I think he's got those in the bag. Arizona is going to be a tight one. I still think my gut feeling will tell me that because there was such a high third-party vote share, a lot of those people voting third-party were Mormons. Trump has kind of reached out to that neocon, Daily Wire crowd since then. I think that'll help him there. I think that'll get him to 260. I think Wisconsin will put him over the top. Obviously, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they're going to go down the wire. Same thing with New Hampshire. Maybe he'll flip Nevada. I think Nevada is going to be closer than what a lot of people would conventionally expect. I think a lot of people don't understand the fact that it has been trending more Republican for a while now. And if you look at the California's 25th congressional election, which, again, I don't believe Trump will win Nevada by 9, but the demographics of that district are very similar to the demographics of the state of Nevada. So I do think there's a potential pickup in Nevada. I think that people shouldn't write it off. And I think Trump's ceiling would be 328. I think his floor would be around 260. I assume somewhere in the middle is where he's actually going to end up.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Sorry. So for me now, for my gut feeling, now I might be a little bit different here. I think that considering all things, now obviously this COVID thing has thrown it now, because I'll preface that, like, obviously things could change. Things obviously are going to change radically. It depends on how this COVID thing looks like in like October. Like, are things still, like, is the economy still in the gutter, or is it like actually like a U-turn? Like, it struck down very fast, but when things started opening, things like recovered. Or is this like a symptom of like a much broader economic problem that like is going to last a few more years? Depends on how that turns out. Depends on like if the virus is now under control, or is it just still rampaging? There's a lot of factors, but in my opinion, I think that Biden has a little bit of an advantage. Now, obviously, it's like, Trump is, a lot of people are like, oh, Trump's gone. Trump definitely has a big, a chance to win. I think it's like, I don't know the percentages. The reason why I say that, because when in 2016, when Trump was this, there's a few things that why I think it's go either way though. Because first of all, in 2016, if you look at all the battleground states that put him over 270, which is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, take those three away, then it's like Trump has like 268 or something like that.
260.
Yeah, 260. So he needed those three states to take him over the top. Now, the thing with that though is that between those states, it was like 80,000 votes. That was the difference between himself and Hillary Clinton. And obviously demographic change has come through those. I think also now also he's lost his kind of like, we know who Donald Trump is. Like a lot of people who voted there, maybe they won't be as inspired because they're like, well, I thought Trump's going to bring all the jobs back. Now he has done something of things, but like it's a lot more better to drive people out on if you're a fresh new face than if you're an incumbent. Now that being said, Sorry. But a few things that I would also add is that Trump does, as Ray Eagle has shown in his channel, during the primary, he does have a very enthusiastic base. If you ask people, Donald Trump and Joe Biden supporters, but Donald Trump has a much better enthusiasm than Joe Biden does. The other thing that Donald Trump has going for him is in the 2016, the third party candidates actually took away a lot more from Trump, Evan McMullin. Now it depends on certain targeted states. And Gary Johnson. Now, obviously, there's not going to be some sort of independent like Evan McMuffin or whatever during this time, as far as I know, and the Libertarian Party. As far as I know, whoever they're nominating is going to be some nobody.
Amash has already dropped out, so probably not going to be it.
So it's going to be some like rando like lawyer probably or something that no one knows, and they're going to get like 1% of the vote or maybe even less than that. They're getting like 2012 numbers, and most of them. Let's just say, are going to go towards Trump. And so that's another thing that might help him out. And then, maybe there might be some section of voters who didn't vote for him, but then now in 2016, but now they're like, okay, I see Trump isn't like as bad that I thought he was going to be. There might be some small thing, but I think all in all, like considering those two, but obviously on the bad side, there's also been his the demographic change throughout, not just in the Midwest area, but also throughout the country. Considering all those, it depends on just how much. Because another thing people have to realize is that it wasn't just the increased white working class support; it was the decrease in the Obama coalition that went out for Hillary. Now, the one thing, this is why I started feeling that Biden's going to win. If I looked at the primary, Hillary was. If you looked at Hillary versus Bernie continued crushing her, like in all those Midwestern and all the rural states, because Hillary Clinton everyone hated her. And one thing that they have is that if people who are undecided between Trump and Hillary, they opted to go for Trump. This time, when he asked undecided people who don't know who they want to vote for, they opt for Biden.
I'll let you finish, but then I want to retort.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say though is that I think a lot of the Trump's how would you say it? His it was on the tip of my tongue. His darn it slipped off my mind. I spoke too fast. What was I talking about before that?
You're talking about his. Do you mean his base?
His before that, like what was I talking about before? I was like getting to a point, and then it slipped off my mind. I forgot. Can you respond to me, Red Eagle? And then
I was just gonna say that I think that I understand where you're coming from for some of it, but at the same time, it's not. I mean, in my view, it's a little inaccurate. When you mention the fact Trump only won by 80,000 votes, that's true. But at the same time, the states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these are states that have been trending in terms of in line with the nation to the Republicans for a few cycles now. I think that trend will continue a little bit. I think, if Trump loses the popular vote by 4, I still think he's going to win Wisconsin. Pennsylvania and Michigan, same thing. There's not exactly any indication of a pendulum swing. primary turnout for Biden, not nearly as big as it should have been, in line with the rest of the country in terms of places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, as well as I think there's something else about, the Ted Cruz vote was very high in places like West Michigan, Waukesha County, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, yeah.
And Trump's support among those types of voters who may not have gone out and backed him in 2016 is actually very high right now. I think Trump only got 85% of Cruz voters or something like that. I think he's going to crack well over 90 now. So I do think that Trump is in a better shape than you mentioned. Also, in terms of the Obama coalition thing and the enthusiasm gap, it's not just Trump's base is more enthused than last time. His strongly favorable rating is up significantly higher. As for Biden, I don't believe Biden's very enthusing at all. As you can see, the enthusiasm gap is far greater than even when it was. I think Hillary's enthusiasm gap with Trump was 13 percentage points. Biden, essentially being a male Hillary, I think plays a little bit of a role into this, has a 35% in a lot of polls I've seen have been up like 32, 35% in the enthusiasm gap. So I think that I understand where you're coming from, that he may not have fulfilled all of his promises, but at the same time, I mean, a lot of people, he's been much better than what a lot of people have expected, or relatively in line with their expectations, because their priorities are different. But that's just my take on the issue. I think he's in a fairly good shape in the Rust Belt. I think that you probably would give him, you said a 40% chance right now. I probably would give him a 65 to 70 in that range. That's basically my take on it. The other thing was, I think for demographic changes, I think that the demographic change argument works in places like Arizona, Texas, and Georgia. But the demographic shift in the Rust Belt's actually going to help helping Trump, not just because of demographics, but because of the trends that are happening, because you have a lot of the blue collar workers that are becoming increasingly more Republican. And Biden, he's just a dead man walking. I mean, if you look at him, I don't understand who his base is. Who does he exactly enthuse? Because I mean, Hillary couldn't enthuse the Obama coalition when Obama was president with a 52% approval rating. Now Biden is supposed to be Obama's successor. He doesn't really bring anywhere close to that enthusiasm. His virtual rallies with 50 people with all those technical difficulties just make his campaign a disaster. And I think the ad game is going to end up being what sinks him at the end, because his optics are terrible.
Yeah. So I think obviously Trump does also, that's another thing I'll give, is that Trump, when he campaigns, and obviously if things start opening up and he actually could do these large rallies and he's very good at like ads and, making those pointed and using his enthusiastic crowds to demean and to break down Biden. I think also if they bring out Biden from the idea of Biden is a lot more appealing than the actual Biden. Once I think Biden if Biden just stays low, he has a better chance. But if he actually goes out and Trump brings him out, that'll be good for Trump. Now, I recognize what I was going to say earlier. One thing is that a lot of the white working class vote in those Midwestern states, they absolutely despised Hillary. And, that this is like a lot of people forget in 2016 when Bernie and Hillary were facing. So Bernie was down like 22 points in like Michigan. And then he won by like half a percentage point. So that was like a huge swing towards Bernie, because that's how much they didn't like Hillary. Now, and then when it came to in 2016, obviously they flipped for Trump. But now with that being said, though, Biden has shown, at least for me from the primary, that he's a lot more stronger. Now, obviously, I think that the trends are still favorite, as you mentioned, maybe the blue collar people especially are moving towards the Republicans, especially with a Trump-like agenda. But I think that there might be enough people who are still kind of like, oh, maybe I'll vote for Biden. Maybe now, maybe if it was like, say, a Bernie or an Elizabeth Warren, they would have gone for Trump, obviously. But then there might be just enough white working class people who are like, well, maybe Biden's like a moderate dude. Maybe I'll still vote for him. There might be enough of those people, because obviously they don't hate Biden as much as they hated Hillary. So I think that was another thing. It wasn't just Trump's populism. I think it was also his opponent.
It's also important taking into consideration the fact that they don't exactly Biden's disapprovals are lower than Hillary's, and they're lower than Trump's, but his approval rating is also lower than Trump's. I think it's important to take that into consideration too. So he's not as hated, but he's not as liked either. And he's kind of that John Kerry, Mitt Romney type of candidate that we always see lose to an incumbent president. Bob Dole, to a certain extent, fit that bill. John McCain, to a certain extent as well. So, I mean, like in terms of the election being held today, I think that Trump would probably do worse than if the election is held in November. But I think Trump has time. Again, he's always been coming in clutch. Last time in the polls really started to tighten in the swing states at the end of the campaign. About a couple weeks before the election, Trump was down in Florida. He's down in Pennsylvania by 7. And the gap closed significantly in a lot of those states. So I think we have a long road ahead of us. I can only sit here and say what I think will happen when it's all said and done. I can change my opinion on it in the meantime. But I think that Biden, he just doesn't generate the enthusiasm. Even Hillary, because Hillary generated enthusiasm. Again, she was a woman that appealed to the angry feminists. Biden is, on the contrary, somebody that is easily made into a handsy type of rapist kind of guy. So I don't think he's going to have the ability to bring all of that enthusiasm. What I will say is, it's funny you mentioned Bernie Sanders. I do think a lot of the Bernie vote was anti-Hillary. I do believe that back in 2016, a lot of the Bernie vote was anti-Hillary. I also think that Bernie his ideas have been just hammered for the past 4 years, and he's 4 years older now than what he was then. I know Biden's almost just as old as Bernie Sanders, but I think that Bernie Sanders underperforming this time had to do with a mix of optics, just a mix of people not being able to generate what he generated back in 2016. A lot of that is because a lot of those people, they became Trump supporters in part. I think that Bernie's back in 2016 was more moderate. He talked about lowering immigration a little bit. He talked about why mass immigration is not good for workers. He talked in a more nationalist tone. He talked about, revitalizing infrastructure. And this time he just didn't have the luster that he had back then. And I think he would have lost both times because he's too far left. Again, when it comes to populism or people that are considered a little outside the Overton window, especially in America, I think that the right-wing populists are a lot more electable than left-wing populists. I mean, if you had a center-left populist like Tulsi Gabbard, I think she would fare a lot better. But Bernie Sanders is just somebody who once self-identified as a Marxist. So I don't think that he was that electable in that regard. And I think he was doing well early on, but I think that just all the Never Bernie movement transpired this time around, and they voted for Biden, whether they liked it or not. So
yeah, with Bernie's election prospects, you could look at someone like Jeremy Corbyn in the UK and see that mass enthusiasm among the youth doesn't really translate to election victories, and that Bernie would probably lose to Donald Trump in the same manner that Jeremy Corbyn lost to Boris Johnson.
What do you guys think about now? Obviously, Red Eagle follows it a lot more than I do, but I've seen some polls where like the old vote, especially the vote above 65, is like. Now, usually when we think about like, oh, those are guys going definitely Republican, but I've seen a few polls where like they're starting to go towards Biden. Do you guys know why?
I just don't believe that, honestly.
Yeah, I think a lot of the early polls are nonsense. Again, in 2015, we saw early polls out of PPP that had Hillary Clinton defeating Jeb Bush by, I believe it was 4 or 5 points in the state of Arkansas. And she ended up losing by roughly 30 points at the end of the day, despite it being once her home state. So I really think the early polls are nonsense. Even in the midterm elections, I think Republicans won the old vote by like 10 points, despite losing nationwide by 9. So I think that a lot of those polls are just, early polls, and we know how those work. You see, sometimes you'll have these polls that'll show Donald Trump with 45% among black voters, and then come election day, he gets 8%.
Yeah.
So I think it's just sampling errors. They happen in all sorts of polls, and sometimes it'll have them really down with one group. Sometimes it'll have them up and above with another. It's just how they weight the polls. Maybe it's older Democrats that were sampled.
There is a because I'm seeing this map right now from like this like prediction from it's called Lean Toss Up or something, the presidential
Oh,
model.
yeah, that's garbage. I wouldn't even look into
I
that.
know, I know. I would. I'm like laughing at it because they're saying that Texas and Georgia and Florida is going to go blue.
That's not gonna that won't happen.
Yeah.
There's only been one poll that had Biden ahead, and it was a Democrat and internal poll. Some of the Republican internal polls have had Trump up by like 10 in Georgia. Personally, I think Trump will end up winning Georgia by like 4, maybe 5.
I've seen a lot of polls that were like at 7 to 8, so I don't know about that.
I think there's a lot of yeah, a lot of the big I think there's like a big realignment happening where like the Southwest and the South are becoming like the Southwest especially is becoming more Democrat, and then like that upper like Midwest is trending Republican. So let's kind of move.
It's essentially political realignment with a swap for the Midwest and the South.
Mm-hmm. So last thing before we move on to the last kind of topic is how would you guys run Trump's campaign? Like Trump says, "Hey, ready to go for conservatism." What is it that you're gonna like? How should I how are you gonna strategize? How are you gonna fight Joe Biden? What are you gonna put out? You know, just kind of, you don't have to be so detailed, but if you
want. Yeah, I did a video on this actually. I think it was titled Trump's Game Plan to Win 2020. And it basically says what I think Trump needs to do. I wish I had the paper with me because I can't remember everything offhand, but it's like a lot of it is defecting onto Biden, keeping the base energized, and just maintaining good optics through the rest of the way. And if he's able to do that and get people out to vote on election day, then he will finish and he'll end up winning. So
I think that he has to go back to his roots. I think that an easy way to say this is with the coronavirus stimulus plan, he could have tried and got to the economic left of the Democratic Party, and he could have championed himself and his party as champions of the working class, but he missed that opportunity and decided to focus more on things like corporate bailouts and whatnot. That would have helped them immensely in the polls, as would more of a focus on immigration, restrictionism, and trying to fight globalization in the same way. And also, I think big tech censorship would have helped them a lot because the message of his support would have gotten out more if he would have taken executive action on that issue.
So,
he did do the retweet of Michelle Malkin talking about it. I think that was a good thing, but
he did.
How many retweets is the question before he actually does? So I mean that's another thing because
he's always monitoring the situation.
He hasn't done enough on big tech.
Yeah. So for me, for what I think is that so I recently saw a clip from Nick Fuentes. He made a good point. So when 9/11 happened, when 3,000 Americans died, what did George Bush do? He got 2 big wars under his belt. He was able to launch the nation into these 20-year wars in the Middle East. He created a whole new Department of Homeland Security. He pushed through the Patriot Act. You know, he was able to push through a bunch of landmark legislations, new departments, new wars. And now that Trump has gotten this gift of not a gift, but electorally speaking, of this huge worldwide pandemic, which you could have easily weaponized, hey, this is why we need to bring trade back. This is why we can't have open borders. And also a giant depression, as of right now. He could have become, as Forum for Conservatism said, he could have used that to become more, send checks out, been for the people, been reorganize the economy in a non-socialist sense, but hey, we're going to be fighting for the working people. He could have, but I think he stumbled that. And it's just, there's so much missed opportunities there. There's just, obviously a big thing is having to go down with Biden, but it's also trying to show what are you going to fight for? Because you can't remember the big thing they pushed in 2016. If you can you guys name the big thing about Hillary? Obviously Hillary had her policies, but her big thing was I'm against Trump, and we can't just be oh,
that's not enough.
Yeah, exactly. We have to as Forum for Conservatism said, we need to have policy get back to our roots and actually have good policies that we're pushing for, and then also show that Joe Biden isn't as moderate. The way I would do that is I'm hey, hey, you support late term abortion, hey, you support like, because, you could, hey, you said you want Beto O'Rourke, who said he wants gun confiscation to run your, gun, your gun policy. If you don't want that, don't vote for him. It's very, the one thing I would have, if I was like the GOP manager, like I would have absolutely, like, because Joe Biden is the best Democrat they could have put out. He's the best person out of the entire field, basically, besides, who had a chance to win. And all the other ones that we could have destroyed. Like I would have been with you guys. I would have gave like 85% to Trump winning if it was like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie or whatever.
Buttigieg, even he would have got leveled.
Oh yeah, Buttigieg. That's 99 again. Look at Buttigieg. I mean, Trump would even get 20% of black voters at a minimum at that point.
Yeah, and so Joe Biden this was the best thing in Democrats, just in terms, just not even just strategy, just picking the right person, and they picked well. They picked the best person. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, Trump could still beat him, but obviously it's going to be a lot more tougher fight. Now, speaking of like how the Republican Party, how the right should approach the American future, let's move on to the future of the American right. So.
All right. So on this issue, I had a bunch of candidates I'd like to get thoughts on, and so.
All right. Yeah, we go through those.
Okay. So first of all, the pirate man himself, Dan Crenshaw.
Cringe. Next.
They're trying to, he's basically, I like the term for him, eye patch John McCain, which is all he is, really. He's not.
I actually had that written down in my notes about him. So
the one thing about him is that they're trying to like beef him up. I don't think he'll run in 2024, but he'll definitely run in like 2028 especially if the Republicans don't win in 2024. I think that I think for him, he's obvious, he has the military background, but he's also the only thing that's going to be different from that's the new establishment GOP. This is also going to represent a Nikki Haley, which you probably have down as well.
Yep.
Those people, they're going to be the same. They're going to be like, we need to fight wars overseas. We need I'm against, I'm against illegal immigration, but they're going to, when it push comes to shove, they are going to push for immigration.
They'll give amnesty. They'll all give amnesty.
Yeah. And, and they're going to say, well, you don't understand. I got a few $100 million for border defenses, or, they'll say that, but, they'll say, they're like, I want legal. They're basically the same thing as John McCain. The only difference is that they're going to try to play the culture war in the sense of like, not in an actual, like, real sense. They're gonna be like, oh guys, look at this really stupid leftist on college who shut down like someone who wants tax cuts. Like, oh my god, like I'm against that. So that's like the only thing they're gonna sound like they're edgy. And plus he's gonna probably prop up that for Nikki Haley, it's like I'm a moderate, like non-white woman. And then for Jen Crenshaw, like I'm a military, like Navy SEAL with an eye patch, so I'm a badass.
Yeah, there's essentially. No, you can go. Sorry.
I was just going to say they're both essentially the same person, especially on policy. I think it'd be either or would be a massive disaster, not just for the nation, but for the future of the conservative movement as well. I think it'd be an absolute disaster. We'd be in, more wars, especially if they'd get into office. That would be even more destructive. If you talk about electability, if they would win, it'd be a very narrow victory. It depends. I'm not exactly sure.
I don't think that either of them would have really any chance whatsoever.
Well, I'd be worried about Crenshaw because, Crenshaw, he'd be doing so much pandering. He'd be doing all the rallies in New Mexico where he's speaking Spanish and stuff like that to get 3% of the Latino vote or something like that. And he could potentially maybe win New Mexico, maybe go into the Southwest there and get Nevada or something like that. But it'd be an ultimate disaster for the Republican Party and the country's future if either one of them gets to lead the conservative movement, in my opinion.
Yeah, to sort of illustrate kind of the immigration beliefs of Crenshaw, there was that video that he did for, I believe, Turning Point, where he called for essentially mass legal immigration in Spanish. He was talking about how we need immigration restriction, but that we're pro-immigrant and all that, which is so stupid. It sort of goes back to the boomer talking point of they can come so long as they come legally. And Nikki Haley, who was the other one, since we're kind of discussing these two in bulk. On the Sunday special that she did with Ben Shapiro, she said something along the lines of immigrants are the fabric of America. They're what makes us great. We need the skills. We need their culture. We need everything, something like that. And I think that that's fundamentally anti-American, saying that we need the cultures that immigrants bring with them. I think it's ridiculous, and I think that her as president would be a disaster, and we'd essentially have open borders.
I think Scott Greer even put it well when he actually said that he would vote for. It was ironic, but he said he'd even vote for AOC over Nikki Haley just to demonstrate how bad of a candidate she would be. And
I mean, the one thing I'll say is that a lot, like, even if, like, let's take it at face value that, like, like, remember how after 2012, I don't know if you guys remember this, but the Republican Party did an autopsy. It's like, we have to be we have to purges of all the racists and all the radicals, and we need to become like the respectable, like, conservative party who we need like a Jeb Bush, we need someone who's for Hispanics, and the thing is that, let's say, for the sake of argument, that we have to, in this growing browning of America, that we can't just be the that, let's say that if we pander to minorities, that's the only way we could win. Well, then basically what people are asking is that the right-wing party just becomes the left-wing party. And the one thing is that you can't out-democrat like a Democrat. Like, you're not going to get you can't get more black, like, oh, well, guess what, guys? We're going to be so good for black people. Black people are cool. Black people are this, that.
We
and
do
then,
that
like,
already. It gets us nowhere.
With reparations and giving free money out.
They're not, unless the Republicans like say, oh, we're also, like, if they push for, if Republicans like, we're going to put for like race-based, like, policies, the Democrats are just going to go even further left and just keep pulling it. So you're not going to out left them. And obviously the reason why they vote for, conservative for the Democratic Party is because of the freebies. So you can't, no matter how much you pull, obviously you're not going to, no matter, even if you're, unless you like sacrifice your whole like right-wing philosophy to win, then what's the point of even
absolutely
winning?
And if you look at the past history of election results, you can see this, and it's well demonstrated. Donald Trump actually got more of the Hispanic vote than Mitt Romney did, and lost the Hispanic vote by a smaller margin than John McCain did. You could even argue that McCain was to the left of Obama on things like immigration. I don't think that that's exactly what matters at the end of the day. I don't think most Hispanic voters exactly care about immigration in particular. So these people saying that Republicans should go far left on immigration in hopes of winning the Hispanic vote, I really doubt that that would actually work in the first place. I think sticking with principled, conservatism is the way to go, and we need to continue to go down the America First path and unleash an actual agenda, hold the Trump coalition, maybe expand the Trump coalition, maybe go a little bit left on some issues economically. I would support that, because I don't think it's cool to shill for big business and things like that. So maybe we do some sort of, taxing certain corporations or something like that. Maybe we could get some of the Bernie Sanders vote. Maybe we could flip Oregon, Washington. Maybe those could be states. Go the Tucker Carlson route in the future. I think that that'd be more beneficial to the electoral benefit of the Republican Party, because Trump did so well in the Rust Belt because he was not one of these far right economic people like Paul Ryan who just shilled for the corporations. Now you're going to have to continue to, stay in this direction if you want to be able to hold that coalition to a certain extent and grow the coalition, because there's trends in other areas like the Northeast. Maybe we can get the Northeast soon.
I think that would be a possibility with several candidates that we can get to in a bit once we're finished.
All right.
So I'll look Forum for Conservatism finish his the thing. I kind of want to also add, but there's a lot of things I want to talk, but I'll let Forum talk about the future candidates.
Okay. All right. So essentially, the next one is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. I think we can agree that he'd essentially be Trump 2.0, except more effective, perhaps, and that he wouldn't really push the boundaries any further than Trump.
He wouldn't put. You actually put it really good. That's actually really good.
Well, I've actually been saying that for a while, that DeSantis is just another 4 years of Trump 2.0.
I think so. As you guys said, it's he's not going to push anything big, but I think he would be the type of, he's going to basically be the same thing as Trump, but I think he'll also be able to put it in a respectable manner with experience, I think, too. I think he'll Ron DeSantis is he's Trump, as you mentioned, but like, and obviously we want Trump to be a little bit better, but obviously keeping a Trump, but making that Trump be like, be more respectable, where he could get the suburb vote and maybe because if you look at the favorable ratings for Ron DeSantis, everyone likes him. Mm-hmm. Like, he has a really high approval rating overall, and even like the Hispanics gave him a majority approval, and then like blacks even gave him like a 30-40% approval rating.
Well, yeah, so I think that was at one point. I don't know if it's still that high. I think it might have taken a little tank after what's happened with the virus, but who knows what'll be the main issue by 2024. He's been a relatively good governor, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think that I would vote for him gladly if he was the nominee. I just don't think that he would. I don't think he necessarily would be that anti-establishment, but I think that he, policy-wise, would just be 4 more years of Trump.
Which I think is decent. So I think, like, unlike Nikki Haley and the eye patch man, Pirate Man. Yeah. We would I would actually like vote for him. Like, I wouldn't be like, because like, for example, if it was like some it obviously all the Democrats have moved so far left, and obviously like the things that I like immigration, like none of them, like even the most so-called moderate people, are just like these radical open border people. The thing is that, so it's going to be very, but the thing is that if it's like a Ron DeSantis, unlike those other people, I would actually like say, hey, I'm going to vote for him. Maybe he's not perfect. I
especially wish that his vice presidential candidate could be somebody like Josh Hawley. I think that'd be good.
That would be really good.
And speaking of Josh Hawley, guess who's next?
Josh Hawley.
Essentially the one who gets it. He's a crusader against big tech censorship. He's recently come under the microscope, so to speak, of the Chinese Communist Party for his criticism of them, which I think is pretty good. I think that maybe you could say he's even the Republican Obama in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, in terms of being like a one-term senator becoming president, he would be
a young guy like that, and having a new vision and taking the Republican Party in a direction.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I don't think he'd be exactly as charismatic as, say, Obama was, but I think that he could be a good candidate if he's able to energize himself based on the big tech thing. And I'd like to see some other policies that he puts forward. And if that's the case, I would think that Hawley. I haven't seen that much of him. I haven't seen him speak publicly. I haven't seen him be too much in the public eye. I don't know if he'd run, maybe a VP candidate, but I would like Josh Hawley.
I think he'd run. I think he is pretty charismatic. I've watched him a lot. I think that Obama was pretty unparalleled in terms of charisma, but I think Hawley is certainly charismatic enough to get far and even to the presidency.
Is there any other people that you think?
Yeah, 2 more. Tucker Carlson. I think this is the best case scenario. He's sort of a crusader for the working man and the American nation. He's championed natalist policies in the past. That's actually how I came to be aware of Viktor Orban and his marriage loans. And I think that Tucker would win in a landslide. He put a lot of states into play that have never even been thought of being in play before. Red Eagle mentioned Washington and Oregon as being the Tucker Carlson route. I think that Tucker would win both of those states, and he'd also leave the Republican Party competitive in a lot of areas in the Northeast as well.
I actually agree with that assessment. I think that Tucker is great economically. I think Tucker's also great socially. I think he can connect with the working man. I personally like Tucker Carlson. I think that he would be a great candidate. I don't know if he'd run. That's my only problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of unrealistic that he would, but I still consider him the best case scenario, sort of like the people's champion in this regard.
I think the best thing he could do right now, or the best thing he has done, is provide, all the people who are on Fox News, like Sean Hannity, they're just these boomer, goblins and all that. They don't do anything. They just parrot whatever, from the whatever conservative thing is in the moment. Tucker is providing an alternative national conservative, ideology that's beyond the boomer Reagan type of viewpoint.
He's definitely an anomaly on Fox News. You have people like Sean Hannity, you mentioned, who's just a neocon, intellectually barren goblin, like you said, without any journalistic integrity, and he's just essentially George Bush, and he's lashed himself onto Trump's coattails for his own clout.
Oh yeah, definitely. Who's the other person?
All right, I think that this one might surprise you, but I think it might be the most realistic option for who the Republican Party might nominate, and that is Tom Cotton of Arkansas.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I figured it would be. I think that he strikes me as someone who could pull a Trump and sort of come out of nowhere and articulate a sort of national populist position, even if he isn't really a nationalist or a populist himself. I think that he has actually paid a few visits to New Hampshire, I believe, in what would presumably be preparation for 2024. He's also ran an ad attacking Joe Biden in Ohio as well, which is it's kind of interesting given the fact that he lives in Arkansas and whatnot. And I've seen his name floated actually a lot more than some might expect. So can I get some thoughts on this? I think he'd be the most interesting candidate per se.
Yeah, I think that that'd be an interesting choice. Personally, I think he's one of the most consistently conservative and populist senators. We just haven't heard that much about him recently in terms of senators over the past 4 years or so. Personally, I think that Tom Cotton would be an interesting choice. We just don't know that much about him or what policies that he would want to implement at a national level.
Yeah, that's why I say he could kind of be like the next Trump and kind of come out of nowhere and surprise us all with a sort of nationalist agenda with some neoconservative elements in it, of course.
Brewski? I'm looking at his just looking through him. Obviously I know who he is. But it seems like he has all the right qualifications, military background, political experience, that I think what you hit in the head, that he might be he won't be as more to the right like Josh Hawley or whatever, that we want, but he'll be enough conservative establishment friendly where he kind of bridges that gap and then becomes he'll be if I had to compare it, he'll be like the Elizabeth Warren of and Josh Hawley would be like the Bernie Sanders if we were say progressives.
Or alternatively, you could say Thierry Baudet to Geert Wilders in the Netherlands.
Or you could say that maybe he could be a potential VP candidate choice. I don't know exactly how old he is.
I think he's like 50, right? I'll check.
43. He's 43.
Oh yeah, he's a lot younger than I thought.
Wait, you're kidding, right?
No, he's 43.
Yeah, he's 43.
I thought you said 23.
No, 43.
Yeah, really, I would not expect that. If that's the case, he could be a VP and potentially run down the road if he wants to. A lot of people in chat are mentioning names. If you want to do a lightning round of that, mentioning Ted Cruz. A lot of people mentioning Ted Cruz.
I supported Ted Cruz in 2016. That was my sort of libertarian sort of neocon phase. He isn't really either of those. I think Ted Cruz represents the evangelical wing of the Republican Party, and he isn't really a nationalist in any way, but he has some sort of nationalist instincts, and I think that he wouldn't be entirely bad, but I also don't think he would win an election.
I think it'd be better for certain issues than Trump is in terms of
social issues. He wouldn't
social issues. He wouldn't cave on
people like Rob Smith in the Republican Party and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Some people are saying Rand Paul. I think I know you're going to say libertarian cringe, which is true to a certain extent, but he does seem to have certain populist tendencies, especially in terms of foreign policy. I don't know much about his immigration stances on that front.
There is a small libertarian kind of ish you could rally people with an anti-government thing. The thing is, I think a lot of the anti-government thing is kind of I don't like it when the government's forcing everyone to do this, but it's not like they're against government force. Essentially, they're just against the government doing this specifically. But then it gets always brought out as anti-government, I think.
Yeah. The thing with Rand Paul is that a lot of libertarians, they're kind of crypto establishment, I guess you could say. But I think I get the vibe from Rand Paul that he actually does care about the common man, which is sort of uncommon in that movement. But at the same time, I think he's very misguided on policies, and I don't think.
I mean, if he wanted to, if he did get into office and he wanted to implement some sort of immigration restrictionist agenda that he hasn't talked much about, in combination with some of his libertarian policies, including non-interventionism, I think that'd be a good thing. I just don't think he's paleo-libertarian enough. I would gladly vote for a paleo-libertarian type candidate, but not really Rand Paul.
Yeah, he's not socially conservative enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not quite there.
So let's go from candidates to kind of more broader. So what's a platform that, whatever, let's just take not just people, like, because that's kind of more realistic about like who's actually going to be representing us.
Mhm.
As of right now that we could see, but like let's just say like in your ideal sense, what should a right-wing party fight for, and like what should the issues be that they put forward? What exactly are the platform? I'm gonna let you guys I'll let Red Eagle and Forum go first. Before we do that though, before we started talking a lot about the candidates, Red Eagle was talking about like a certain aspect about you were talking about like electoral, something about electorally. I forgot what you were talking about before.
I don't exactly remember.
I don't either. Yeah.
Darn it. I was going to add something to that. But
I can start on this topic.
Okay.
Essentially, there's two paths forward for the Republican Party. There's one that's essentially Charlie Baker, Phil Scott, sort of New England conservatism, and that would be what the Republican Party would look like, which is essentially still worshiping markets, but also being socially liberal and not actually conserving anything. The other path forward is America First conservatism, which I think would actually be more electorally solvent in the future. Like immigration restrictionism would be a big part of it. National identity, being pro-environment. I know Ruski's big on that, as he said earlier.
Mhm.
General social conservatism, and like a sort of center-left economics, almost distributist, but not really. Just more like capitalism for Main Street rather than Wall Street. I think that would be the best path forward.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I aligned out in my America First doctrine that I wrote, as well as on my website. No, it's in response to that actually.
Yeah.
But I did on my website, I did a column. If you guys want to go look for it, redeaglepolitics.com. It just got released last week, talking about the Red New Deal policies that will win conservatives the future. And I kind of outlined it there. Obviously, there has to be a clear commitment to traditional values and conservative values. That's the pathway we need to go down instead of the TPUSA, Charlie Baker, Charlie Kirk type you've talked about. Ending foreign aid's a big one. Building up the military at home. That includes actually reducing spending by closing a lot of the military spending that we have abroad. Ending immigration, not just illegal, but achieving negative net migration. Building up the country's through social programs that incentivize family growth, not the current welfare system that coddles people that aren't willing to work, ending foreign wars, and breaking up the big companies that stunt growth for Main Street capitalism. That's what I wrote down. The big deal that I have is you do have these two, and the Democrats have it too. It's that you have these two, you have a fork in the road, and one of the parties is going to go the populist direction. The other party is not. And we could see this. The Republicans right now, I think right now have the upper edge in terms of going populist. The Democrats, on the other hand, are going the other way. I think that they're going to redistrict out their leftist populist candidates that are just disastrous, and the right will be able to consolidate some of the moderate support for populists on the left.
The non-woke ones, yeah.
Yeah.
For my, so are you guys you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think that center left economics is not something I'm afraid of. Personally, I am in the blue quadrant barely. I do think that markets are good for some things. At the same time, I think that we do need some sort of anti-big business rhetoric, especially when it comes to things like big tech and trade regulations, in terms of not allowing other countries to destroy us on trade. So I personally do believe that sort of a Nick Fuentes type of economic policy would be good moving forward for the future.
So, what I'm going to say about the future of the right is in America is there's two things I'm going to touch on. I'm going to talk about broadly, and then like specific policies, as you guys mentioned. Firstly, now this is also one thing. Also has to remind is how the Democrats are responding. Now, this is probably especially going to be prevalent if Joe Biden loses. But if we get like some sort of rabid, like progressive, as the party turns out to become more and more racial, like where they become more racialized and become more anti-white, where they become more anti-American, where they become more, it's not the party of like, we're just, third position, like neoliberal, like, like we're moderate center left people socially and economically. These are like rabid people who want reparations, who want open borders, who want, transgender children, who want, late term abortion, all these types of things. And you could, obviously when you have a party like that, this is where you could especially, distinct yourself from them. Now, I think if that's a big thing. It's going to determine the right's future success. That's as of someone who wants the right. Now, obviously, I would rather have a Joe Biden presidency than an AOC presidency, right? But obviously, it's a lot more. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but I'll make it quick. An AOC presidency would be better in some regards than a Joe Biden one, just because of accelerationism, and it'd wake a lot of.
Well, yeah. So that's actually what I was going to add on, is that in a if we were going to run against like an AOC or like a rabid progressive, it's going to be a lot easier for us to get our ideas in than if it was just a Joe Biden. Because like people who might vote for us anyway, they're like, well, why Joe Biden seems moderate. But now to the right itself, the Republican Party, as long as the electoral thing, because if it becomes like a Dutch system where the multiple parties could run, and it's like proportional representation, and it's a whole different story. Obviously, that changes the whole ball game. But if it's just the current system where basically only two parties could win, the right party, the Republican Party, first of all, broadly demographically speaking, has to be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge white people's party. Now, obviously, no matter how much as the Democrats became more and more anti-white, you have to be a civic nationalist. Now, I'm not advocating for like a white nationalist party, obviously not. It has to be like a party that's for all Americans. Now, that sounds like a boomer cringe, right? But you have to. But it's not just where usually when boomers do that, they focus so much on minorities and not on the white working class. It has to be for like not just the southern whites, but also the the Midwestern whites and the whites in like normal Western regions as well, like Nevada and such. Not only that, I think as generations go by, this is long term, I think a lot of Hispanics will drop their previous Hispanic identity, especially as they live in America. I think also it has to be basically just diminish the margins with minorities within the Democratic Party and increasing them on the majority party. Now, when they're in power, what they have to do is they have to play hard. They have to play Machiavellian politics. Like the Democrats are doing it well. You see this, like they're like, oh, we want to expand. They want to give the statehood to Puerto Rico and DC. This isn't just because they want to. It's because they give them more power.
Yeah.
The reason, and I'm saying this truly, that the reason why we want immigration restriction is not just because we want, America to remain its traditional identity and also help workers, the environment, and the social services. Not just that, but it's also for power, because the more immigrants you bring in, the more likely that they vote Democratic. So it's a power move. Also, the judges thing. It's also you have to play Machiavellian politics. This is why This is like, if whatever restricts voter turnout for like minorities, whatever increases, basically we're not going to play fair. We're going to play whatever brings at us. Now and also it has to be a party that's pro-market, but pro-worker. We're not going to be like so anti-capitalist that we're like do it from a socialist point of view, but it's going to be like, we want a capitalism that's, for small business, but also for like the working man that works for everyone. That's kind of broad. Now, what does that mean? I think also now, obviously my big thing, what the biggest thing in my channel is immigration restriction. Now, I'm going to say this a little, I don't think immigration restriction should be the front and center of the campaign. It should be the number one thing you go after when you're in power. But I think there should be a few things that are a bit more palatable to the general populace.
General improving the wages and working because not everyone is going to swallow the sort of immigration restrictionism stuff, and still have to be able to appeal to other people. And the way you do that is not by having immigration restrictionism front and center. You put things like raising wages, improving quality of life for people, making it easier for people to start families, that sort of thing at the first and foremost.
the way I would so like for example, the way I would do it is it also depends on like the circumstances. Like for example, if you're in the middle of an economic depression, you're able to push more economically right wing like left wing like well, how do you say like more nationalist proposals. Then it would depend on the circumstances. Like what are you the income, like did you just go through 2 years of Republican rule? Was it 2 years of Democrat rule? How was that Democrat? How was that Republican? Obviously like after George Bush, where he retired in a recession and had like a 20% approval rating, obviously it's going to be pretty hard to go up against this charismatic, left-wing populist. It's going to be harder than maybe if you're going, there's different circumstances, obviously, but ideally, in my opinion, you should put something like, at least this is my ideally, is that there's, for me, what I've put is an anti-corruption thing. It's basically electoral and governmental reform, basically like a Ross Perot type thing. I would also do the second thing would be like a national industrial strategy. Basically say, hey, we want, and then what I call a 5-star economic policy. It's a bit complicated, but the way it works is it's basically, raising the minimum wage to like $10 or $11, paid family leave, investments in infrastructure, research and development and industry. So we're an export oriented economy. And then also we take a bunch of issues. And then also along there is, and then the other thing is then like, we take a lot of issues that the Democrats might be, more like, oh, we want to, in 10 years, abolish all fossil fuel. But we're like, hey, look, we want natural gas and eventually becomes energy self-sufficient. And then eventually over time become more friendly to it. We want to be like a Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, we need some sort of actual palatable policy that's going to be able to compete with whatever the Democrats are pushing.
Yeah, and basically like, hey, we're for, we don't like, and then when you're socially conservative as well, and I want like a family policy where we and strike hard on the family values thing.
Yes.
And obviously for me, I have two. We could go into detail. I have two like I've talked to Forum for Conservatism about this, about my family policy and my immigration policy, and I've been working on these other points as well. But obviously immigration, though, once you get in power, once these right-wing populists get in power, they absolutely must focus on immigration. That's the first thing. And then also structure basically make it where you could get power more. So the two things I would have focused on if I was Donald Trump. And also you have to put like a red meat to the base. Because like, for example, you have to, if I had to do some red meat, if I was the first tier, it would have been immigration reform in the tense that we're talking about. And then like the social media, like you have to treat like the Twitter, so like, YouTube, Google, Facebook, you have to make them public, like where they're still privately run. They can still make profit off of it, but there's not like any where you could like ban people off of it unless they're like committing like some crime or something. But like there's no like they could take you off of it because they're like public utilities or something like that. So these are things that could like expand your power, right? And basically that's what the main thing is. And then I would also do for healthcare, because that's actually one thing we didn't talk about, is that in 2018, the reason why the Democrats won is because of healthcare.
Yeah.
The way I would do it is now, obviously, I'm in favor of like, maybe this is just my roots, but I've always been in favor of universal healthcare. But I would be in favor of like some sort of public option, like a Dutch or Swiss type system where.
That's probably what I would prefer. I think that's be a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, and I think that everyone should get healthcare, but I kind of like schooling. Like you could go to a public school, but you could also go to you could still get private insurance and go to a private doctor if you want. But everyone gets healthcare. That's like my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So, do you guys want to do closing statements? Because I know we said 90 minutes. It's already been 87. So, I got some things to do. So we should probably end sooner than later.
Oh yeah, sure thing.
I don't know if you guys want to do closing statements or something.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
All right. Before you do that, is there anything else you guys want to like add on for the future of the right before we do closing?
Well, yeah, I just, like I said, I would recommend going to my website if you're listening, redeaglepolitics.com, then reading the article I wrote called The Red New Deal. It talks about some of these policies that, it's a combination of policies that they use in Orban's Hungary, some policies that have been, pushed by certain congressional candidates in America, just a mix of what I believe the right should implement in their future.
Yeah, and if you're interested in natalist policy just in particular, then I have a pretty in-depth video about this on my channel. I had a previous discussion with Ruski on this topic, and I proposed several things, and some of them are original, I believe, anyway. And so I would recommend you go check that out as well.
Mhm.
So we can move on.
And
yeah, again, I put both channels. I put Ruski's and Forum's channels in the link in the description below. So you guys make sure you go check those out. Subscribe to those channels as well as my channel. We just hit 37.2K, which that's good. So
awesome. And just, like if I had to give like a vision of like kind of if I had to take like a party from Europe, like a few parties from Europe, I would say the National Rally Party in France, the Danish People's Party, and then the Law and Justice Party in Poland, and then the Hungarian Party, the Fidesz, yeah. Those are like kind of the parties I would kind of emulate in a, obviously there's differences,
and
but like
Lega too, Lega Nord.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, so we could go to closing statements. Should I guess Forum, you want to start off, Forum?
Yeah, sure. Essentially, in a battle of ideas with the left, we will always win because we're right. The left's agenda goes against our basic instincts as a human. A lot of the initial reaction to seeing transsexuals, for instance, is some sort of disgust reaction, and that's just basic human, a basic human quality right there. And the left's response to this is to essentially say that your instincts are wrong and you have to retrain your brain if you want to be truly right. Well, we embrace human nature. We understand human nature. And our policies reflect that. Our policies don't contradict each other either. And so as a result of that, we have to have ideas if we're going to win. And so the sort of two paths I discussed earlier about Charlie Baker conservatism versus Tucker Carlson conservatism is that Tucker Carlson conservatism has ideas. Charlie Baker conservatism is just the establishment and things that are no longer relevant and don't work in the modern era rehashed. And so those are the two options we have, and I hope that the American public is wise enough to see which one is superior and which one will ultimately win the day.
All right. Yeah, I agree completely. I think we need to push the America First agenda, not the corporate Conservatism Inc. that's been pushed for decades and decades that's failed in America as well as many other places. So anyways, I think we'll end the stream now. It has been 90 minutes. It is 7 p.m. So I do
may I
appreciate everybody for tuning in.
Wait.
Closing statement.
He wants to make a closing statement.
Oh, you didn't make one?
Yeah, no, not yet. Let me just I'll do it quickly. So fundamentally, we are in the fight for the soul of what America is going to look like. Are we going to make America just become like a rotting superpower where we will eventually degenerate and balkanize and become like a South Africa? We are fundamentally at, obviously there are a lot of people, we want to convince people of the right ideas, bring them to the right policies that will help America regrow and rebuild and become great. But there's people, it's not just going to be like defeating Joe Biden in 2020. It's not just going to be like making sure we could get Republicans elected. It's going to be making sure the Republican Party is a true and tested conservative nationalist party, a party that is true to our values. And not only that, we actually fight for the institutions that are within our society, against the media, against the education system, against the high finance, Wall Street corporatists who are for the Democrats now. And all these types of things is a battle for America. It's not just like, this is a battle of like, we lost. Oh, No, it's a battle for what America is going to be. And, we have to take, we have to use Machiavellian, ways to enhance our power, push our ideas, and bring people to our side and hopefully save America before it's too late.
All right. Well, I agree with you. Again, what I said is that America First is the way forward, and we must stick to our convictions and not cave to the left on every single issue. And if we can do that, I think that the conservative movement in America as a whole will be stronger as a result. So anyways, it's been nice stream. Again, subscribe to their channels. The link is in the description below.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyways, it's been a good conversation, but I gotta sign off now. So I'll see everybody next time.
Yeah, see ya.
See ya.
Oh, he actually left.